Krishna devotees, welcome to Shloka Day. Today's shlokas are from 51 to 53 of chapter 18. Buddhya vishuddhaya yuktaha
Buddhya vishuddhaya yuktaha
dhrityatmanam niyamya cha
dhrutyatmanam niyamya cha
shabdadin vishayam styaktva
shabdadin vishayams tyaktva
ragadveshau vyudasya cha
ragadvesho vyudhasya cha
viviktasevi laghvashi
viviktasevi laghvasi
yatavak kaya manasaha
yatavakkaya manasaha
jnana yoga paro nityam
dhyana yoga paro nityam
vairagyam samupashritaha
Vairagyam samupashritaha
ahankaram balam darpam
ahankaram balam darpham
kamam krodham parigraham
kamam krodham parigraham
vimuccha nirmamah shantaha
vimuchya nirmamah shantaha
brahma bhuyaya kalpate.
brahma bhuyaya kalpate.
What meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Buddhya,
Buddhya,
intelligence.
intelligence.
Vishuddhaya,
Vishuddhaya,
fully purified.
fully purified.
Yuktaha,
Yuktaha,
engaged.
engaged.
Kritya,
Dritya,
determination.
by determination.
Atmanam,
Atmanam,
the self.
the self.
Niyamya,
Niyamya,
regulating.
regulating. Cha,
Also,
also.
Shabda Adin,
Shabda adin,
such as sound.
such as sound.
Vishayan,
Vishayan,
sense objects.
the sense objects.
Tyaktva,
Tektva,
giving up.
giving up.
Raga,
Raga,
attachment.
attachment.
Veshav,
Dvesha,
and hatred.
and hatred.
Yudasya,
Vyudhasya,
laying aside.
laying aside.
Uh,
Cha,
So,
also.
Vivikta Sevi,
Vivikta Sevi,
in a secluded place.
living in a secluded place.
Laghu Ashi,
Laghu Asi,
Ashi, it's a sha. Eating a small quantity.
eating a small quantity.
Yata,
Yata,
having controlled.
having controlled.
Vak,
Vak,
speech.
speech.
Kaya,
Kaya,
body.
body.
Manasaha,
Manasaha,
mind.
and mind.
Dhyana yoga paraha,
Dhyana yoga paraha,
absorbed in trance.
absorbed in trance.
Nityam,
Nityam,
24 hours a day.
24 hours a day.
Vairagyam,
Vairagyam,
detachment.
detachment.
Sampashritaha,
Samupashritaha,
having taken shelter of.
having taken shelter of.
Ahankaram,
Ahankaram,
false ego.
false ego.
Lam,
Balam,
false strength.
false strength.
Darpam,
Darpam,
false pride.
false pride.
Kamam,
Kamam,
lust.
lust.
Krodham,
Krodham,
anger.
anger.
Parigraham,
Parigraham,
an acceptance of material things.
and acceptance of material things.
Vimuchya,
Vimuchya,
delivered from.
being delivered from.
Nirmamaha,
Nirmamaha,
without a sense of proprietorship.
without a sense of proprietorship.
Shantaha,
Shantaha,
peaceful.
peaceful.
Brahma bhuyaya,
Brahma bhuyaya,
realization.
for self-realization.
Kalpate,
Kalpate,
qualified.
is qualified.
Translation. Being purified by his intelligence
Being purified by his intelligence
and controlling the mind with determination,
and controlling the mind with determinations,
giving up the objects of sense gratification,
giving up the objects of sense gratification,
being freed from attachment and hatred,
being freed from attachment and hatred,
one who lives in a secluded place,
one who lives in a secluded place,
who eats little,
who eats little,
who controls his body,
who controls his body,
mind, and power of speech,
mind, and power of speech,
who is always in trance,
who is always in trance,
and who is detached,
and who is detached,
free from false ego,
free from false ego,
false strength,
false strength,
false pride,
false pride,
lust, anger,
lust, anger,
and acceptance of material things,
and acceptance of material things,
free from false proprietorship,
free from false proprietorship,
and peaceful,
and peaceful.
such a person is certainly elevated
Such a person is certainly elevated
to the position of self-realization.
to the position of self-realization.
So this is the Jnana section summary combined with Bhakti. So when one is purified by intelligence, Prabhupada writes, he keeps himself in the mode of goodness. Thus one becomes the controller of the mind and is always in trance. He is not attached to the objects of sense gratification, and he is free from attachment and hatred in his activities. Such a detached person naturally prefers to live in a secluded place. He does not eat more than what he requires, and he controls the activities of his body and mind. He has no false ego because he does not accept the body as himself, nor has he a desire to make the body fat and strong by accepting so many material things. Because he has no bodily concept of life, he is not falsely proud. He is satisfied with everything that is offered to him by the grace of the Lord, and he is never angry in the absence of sense gratification, nor does he endeavor to acquire sense objects. Thus, when he is completely free from false ego, he becomes non-attached to all material things, and that is the stage of self-realization of Brahman. So here, Brahman means self-realization. That stage is called the Brahma Bhuta stage. When one is free from the material conception of life, he becomes peaceful and cannot be agitated. This is described in Bhagavad Gita, Sloka number 70 of chapter 2. Apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudramapah pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti nakamakami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So Prabhupada is explaining the shloka as, and the Lord is saying, someone will certainly reach that stage of Brahman realization when he is completely detached from all activities. He is not endeavoring anymore to satisfy any of his senses. He is just at that stage of complete self-realization, in the sense that you see yourself as just a speck of dust. When you have the sense of false ego, false pride, false this, then you think you are the doer, no? Kartaham iti manyate, you think you are the doer, and you are only the doer. Whereas Krishna has explained there are 5 factors that determine activities. Here from another parampara, Sri Krishna has been explaining how, by performing our duties in the proper consciousness, we can attain perfection. He now describes the excellence that is required for the perfection of Brahman realization. He says, in that state of perfection, we develop a purified intellect that is established in transcendental knowledge. Just as we were discussing yesterday, what does the karmi want? He wants material sense gratification. What does the jnani want? He wants all of his troubles to cease. And to do that, his goal is Brahman realization. What does a yogi want? Most yogis want mystic powers. They develop it automatically. They don't have to strive for it. As part of their intense sadhana, they develop it. And what does a bhakta want? A bhakta wants just service. So service is the most important component for a bhakta. Therefore, Prabhupada describes or translates bhakti as not just devotion, but as devotional service, which means devotional service is filled with activities for the pleasure of the Lord. Even mundane activities can be converted into spiritual activities. So here the talk is about Brahman realization. So the senses are restrained and the impulses of the body and speech are tenaciously disciplined. The activities for bodily maintenance, such as eating and sleeping, are wisely held in balance. Such a yogi is deeply contemplative and hence prefers solitude. The ego and its lust for power and prestige are dissolved. Constantly engaging the mind in transcendence, the yogi is tranquil and free from the bonds of desire, anger, and greed. Such a yogi attains realization of the absolute truth as Brahman. Okay, so self-realization can also lead to God realization. But if your attraction to God realization is in his impersonal aspect, then you will get that kind of impersonal realization. So His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu writes, renunciation is an expensive business. Some people think that renunciation is a cheap business, just as even those without much capital can start a cheap business. Similarly, those without much determination to shoulder responsibilities can adopt renunciation. If you feel that the pressures of family life are getting too much for you, then you can also adopt renunciation, but that's a cheap kind of renunciation. It's just giving up, it's escapism. Yes, it's sadly true. Some people do take to the renounced order and as an escape way from responsibility. But the Bhagavad Gita, Slokas 7 to 8 in the chapter 18, stresses that such renunciation is unproductive. Such kind of renunciation does not lead to any spiritual growth. That means you should only renounce if it helps you on the spiritual path. To be authentically renounced, we need to embrace renunciation wholeheartedly, not take it too dejectedly as the last option after all other options have failed. In the sense, you try your best to solve problems and solve your difficulties in personal life. And if all else fails, then you decide, yeah, I can just give up. Renunciation that is fueled by frustration doesn't last for long. For our renunciation to be sustainable, we need to consciously disinvest our emotions from worldly objects. So our emotions from worldly objects includes people, not just objects. Sometimes we consider people as objects. As we all are naturally attracted to sensual pleasures and bodily comforts, turning away from them requires a lot of determination. If we compare this determination to the capital needed for starting a business, then renunciation is an expensive business. Thankfully, we don't need to be in the renounced order to achieve life's supreme perfection, love for Krishna, the all-attractive Supreme, whose eternal parts we all are. He is accessible to anyone who wants to love him, irrespective of whether they are renounced or engaged. So we are very grateful to the Lord that through the process of Bhakti Yoga, Simply by learning to love him, you become renounced. So you don't have to take up the very austere process of physical renunciation of family life, of bodily activities, etc. We can just dovetail everything into Krishna consciousness. So every simple activity can become a Krishna conscious activity. That is the beauty of practicing devotional service. He is accessible to anyone who wants to love him, who wants to love him. So love means there is no concept of force. A lot of people ask in these classes, why does the Lord, not just tell us that this is the right thing to do? Or why does he allow us to wander away from him? Why doesn't he just force us to love him? When the concept of love, there is no force. Love should be of your own volition, of your own sense of freedom. That is actually surrender, right? How can the concept of surrender go hand in hand with forced love, if at all you can call it love? So, the Lord is accessible to anyone who wants to love him, irrespective of whether they are renounced or engaged. He offers all of us the process of bhakti yoga to seamlessly transfer our emotional investments from the world to him. That is actually the path of making progress in the spiritual realm. We invest so much time and energy in so many things other than Krishna. If we only transfer all of that energy to love and serve Krishna, then it will do us a whole world of good, not just materially, but also spiritually. So we simply have to transfer all of our emotional investments in other things and in other people to Krishna. Even if we don't have enough renunciation to embrace the renounced order, we can still practice bhakti yoga with whatever renunciation we have. So it is not that we have to become one very perfect sadhu to become a devotee of Krishna. Actually, you can become a devotee of Krishna when you are completely imperfect. And from there, your journey begins. We can respect the renounced order as an expensive business that we can't afford, at least not presently. And we can engage in the affordable business of practicing bhakti according to our present social position, knowing that Krishna is fully accessible to us. This whole chapter begins with Arjuna's question: what is the difference between renunciation and what is the other thing that we discussed? Arjuna's question is Tyaga better or is sannyas better? What is the difference between renunciation on the external platform and internal platform, and actually using everything in the service of Krishna? By serving Krishna devotionally through our occupation, we can progress gradually towards eternal ecstatic absorption in Krishna. So it's a process, it's a journey, and we have to have that level of patience to go through this process of bhakti yoga, where step by step, slowly but surely, you are getting closer and closer to Krishna until you are ready to completely surrender to him. So surrender also is not something that just happens overnight. It's a journey. When you realize actually you're not in control of anything in your life, everything has been organized by Krishna, then that's the process of surrender. But you can begin your journey of surrender to Krishna through whatever duties and responsibilities you have today. You don't have to give it up separately and say, this my whole life I will set aside for Krishna. You continue to do your duties and responsibilities, because if we give up our duties and responsibilities, there will be chaos in society. Yeah, the concept of family and family units will simply disintegrate. That is why Krishna is not advising against going to the forest as Arjuna wanted, simply because the war was a very difficult proposition for him. He had to fight his own family members. Hence, Krishna is dissuading Arjuna from giving up his duties and responsibilities for the sake of protecting his family members, but rather to simply dovetail his duties and responsibilities for the pleasure of Krishna. So ultimately, Arjuna decides it is better for me to please Krishna than to do what I think is better for me. Right? So that's the final decision that Arjuna reaches. And he says, Karishye vachanam tava. Whatever you say, Krishna, I will do it. He doesn't say, I have made up my mind. I have understood everything that you said, and now I have decided to fight. He simply says, I have decided to follow your instructions. That is surrender. When you do what Krishna wants you to do. So that's the essence of this particular shloka, is the qualities and the features of someone who is ready to achieve that Brahman realization. So Brahman realization has many meanings. It's self-realization. It also could be Parabrahman realization.
If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell notification. If you'd like to join our classes every day, please check the details in the description section of this video. We look forward to serving you.